guys. Don't know if anybody's just in here or in here just yet. I did check a few seconds ago, and there was like one person watching or whatever. Um, but anyways, as you can see, I let my hair down literally for this live stream. Um, I don't know. I just decided to wear it down instead of putting it up. Not that anybody cares or needs to know or anything like that. Um, but I did get the well, actually, I didn't do it, but an AT&T tech who was, very knowledgeable and stuff, by the way, which is not always the case with when you have techs come out to your house to install something. And he only had one little hiccup: the modem that he brought out for our AT&T fiber would not fire up. So he had to give us one that was a little bit older than the one that he, originally intended for us to have. He did specify that if we were not getting the speeds that we wanted, to call AT&T customer service and request uh, to get a different modem. They're like everybody else; they're short on parts due to the pandemic and all sorts of other issues that have been causing supply chain issues is what we call it in computer services at the library. Um, but in any event, we were able to get the AT&T fiber. The guy was here from 12 till after 3 sometimes, so he was here quite a while, but he was within that 4 hour window of time that they said that it may take to get it all installed. Um, and the funny thing is, I'll tell you a funny little story about this. This will give more people time enough to get in here before I start talking about the movies. Um, I knew that the guy didn't unhook our other the internet to Spectrum, which is what we had before. Um, but Steve was like doing a speed test, and he was like, "Well, Dana, the speeds ain't any better." I said, "You know why? Because we didn't unhook the old modem and hook the network cable into the new modem." I said, "That's why." And he's like, "Oh." So, when he got a chance, we did that. And then he checked the speeds and he was like, "Oh, I don't think he wants to admit that the speeds are much better than with Spectrum. But I can see just by the few minutes that I've been on here live streaming, OBS says I have 0% drop frames. And usually I would have several drop frames by now with Spectrum. And also, my connection is showing solid green. So, so far so good. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that things keep going well. And I do have my Dana on deck, the Dana on deck overlay that Wes made for me. It's actually showing up now. I don't know. I must have had something screwy with the layers last time, was why it wasn't showing up. But now it's showing up. So, um, I did also want to remind anybody that's watching of the things that are for sale in my Etsy shop. And I think I'm going to start selling some Deadites on deck stuff on Etsy. Not t-shirts, mind you, because right now I don't have a way to make the t-shirts properly the way I would want to. So I still got the t-shirts on TeePublic. There's 2 different designs. I've been toying with the idea of having a new design. I just haven't had a chance to work on it yet. I know I've been saying that for weeks or months or whatever, but I haven't. It just seems like I haven't had as much time as I would like to work on things like that. Um, but I am gonna try to put some other like Deadites on deck. Like maybe I'll offer the pint glasses and Deadites on deck, and have the Deadites on deck logo. Um, I may try to make like a different logo other than like, I know the shirt scares people, but you can't really see the face on it because I'm real close to my computer, and so you can't you can't see it, so you won't get scared by it. But I'm thinking about trying to design another logo that I could put on pint glasses and make stickers and all that, so that you guys could, if you're interested in purchasing that stuff through the Etsy shop, you could do that. Heck, maybe even I'll make Deadites on deck candles or something. Because right now I've got horror candles, I've got Last Drive-In candles, I've got Last Drive-In stickers, I've got Last Drive-In pint glasses. Um, so, you got your pick of many pieces of merchandise that you can purchase. Um, I think the things in my Etsy shop are a little bit more reasonably priced than the t-shirts on TeePublic, but hey, they got to make a profit, I got to make a profit. I'm assuming that's why things are a little bit more expensive there. But the good thing about TeePublic is you have 30 and 40% off sales almost all the time. Um, and Again, I don't know. It looks like there's one concurrent viewer right now. So maybe I'm not going to have anybody tonight. I don't know. Or not very many. I sure don't see anybody chatting um, or asking me anything. So um, hopefully you guys can hear me okay and everything, and not just see me. um, but let's see. The only other thing I wanted to bring up, as far as, well, it's not news yet because I haven't actually sent her a message, but I am going to, um, perhaps tonight, send Darcy the Mail Girl a message through Twitter to see if she'd be interested in doing a live stream with me. And I know there were several of you that expressed an interest in me having Darcy on. So I'm going to try my best to work out, something with her. Um, like I said, I'm going to try to message her tonight. I'm not sure when she'll be able to get back with me, but I figured now would be a better time to do this than to wait when she's doing the Last Drive-In shows again. Perhaps now she would have a little more time to do that. And that way, you guys could ask her questions and stuff. Please, for me, keep them clean. I mean, I know that, I don't want to seem like I'm a mother figure, and I'm chastising you guys in advance, thinking you're going to be vulgar. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, she's been in porn, she's done this, she's done that, she's used to it. But I am asking you, as another woman, to please be respectful of her when she's on here. Don't ask really super personal questions. If she wants to talk about her personal life, that's fine. But I would prefer, if I'm the one asking her to be on my live stream, I don't want it to be a potentially bad experience for her. So I'm just asking beforehand, before I even announce her being on here for sure for a hard and fast date. I'm just asking to just treat her like you would treat your mother or your wife or your girlfriend or whatever, and I hope you would treat all those people with respect. Because I really don't want to have to boot anybody out of here. But I will if it starts to become a free-for-all. and people are just, talking about her boobs or like I said, asking her really super personal questions and all that. You can ask her things about the last drive-in and stuff, and I'm sure she'll tell you what she can. Um, but let's just try to keep it on the level if I am able to get her on here. But okay, I'm sorry. I'm off of my soapbox now, I promise. Um, I don't want to make anybody feel bad or anything. This is just like I want to put out any potential fires before they happen. So, anyways, and still nobody's in the chat. I'm going to check and see. Yeah, like nobody must not be interested in me doing this doing this one on horror anthology films. But I guess I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if there are some of you guys that come in a little later due to other, obligations or whatever, um, just feel free to jump in anytime. This is my first live stream in a while where I haven't had any interaction at the beginning, and we're 15 minutes in right now. But I'm going to go ahead and get started with the first film I was going to talk about. And as I said, it's Horror Anthology Films. Now, this is another one that I may end up doing a part two for, because there are movies like Trick or Treat that I don't have in this stack. And I thought about it later, and I thought, well, I could always do a part two of this and talk about that one and maybe a few others at that time. So keep in mind that this is not an all-inclusive list of anthology films. So please, I hope you won't be bummed out if I forget or have left out one or two of your personal favorites. And feel free, if anybody is in the chat, to list some of your favorites, because I love that, because that will probably give me somewhere a starting point if I do a second one of these. So the first one I want to talk about is this is from 1972, and it's Asylum. And I love this film, and I'm gonna, I'm not gonna. Well, it may be a spoiler when I talk about the end of this movie. So, if you've not seen Asylum, when I get to the part where I'm talking about the end part, because that's the part that really gave me the shivers the first time I watched it, and it's still creepy to watch. But I don't want to give away this little piece of information for somebody that hadn't seen the film. But anyway, Asylum was part of the Amicus collection. This was directed by Roy Ward Baker. And Dark Sky Films put this out. And this is a DVD. There is a Blu-ray out that I need to get at some point. I just haven't gotten it yet. And it's only PG, which essentially just means it's not extra bloody or anything, but it is very, very effective. So, the wraparound story is Dr. Martin, played by Robert Powell, arrives at the Dunmore Asylum for the incurably insane. He expects that he's going to be interviewed for a job by Dr. Starr, who is the asylum's director. Instead, he's met by Dr. Rutherford, played by Patrick McGee. who explains that Dr. Starr has had some kind of mental breakdown and he's now upstairs as one of the patients. So Dr. Rutherford tells Martin, Dr. Martin, that if he can figure out which patient upstairs is Dr. Starr, then he will be given the position. So once Dr. Martin goes upstairs, he is met. He's met by an attendant who takes him to each one of the rooms where there's a patient. The patient's stories make up the anthology part of this movie. So the first patient that Dr. Martin sees is Bonnie, played by Barbara Parkins, who tells a story of an affair she had with a married man, which resulted in his wife's murder. And after the wife was murdered, the husband dismembers her and puts her in a freezer. But before the murder happens, the wife has a bracelet on, and I'm guessing it's some kind of maybe like voodoo type thing or something like that. So that when she's murdered and dismembered, her body parts seem to keep on living. And essentially, the body parts come back, find their way out of the freezer, and kill the husband and maim Bonnie. The next story is told by a man named Bruno, played by Barry Morse, who many of you will, well, I don't know if many of you will remember, but those of you that like Canadian horror movies and that have seen Funeral Home will remember Barry Morse being in that film as well. But Bruno is a poor tailor who is visited by a mysterious stranger played by Peter Cushing. And Peter Cushing's character has a blueprint and some special fabric for an unusual suit. So, what turns out to happen in this story is it's sort of similar to hey, X-Ray, you say Canadian movies have the same 5 actors in all of them. That is actually a very apt statement, X-Ray, because Funeral Home has some of the same actors as My Bloody Valentine. It has some of the same actors as Curtains. I could go on and on with these things, you know. I mean, I think there was even a guy from Funeral Home that may have been on Black Christmas. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that this guy that was the farmer where they found the car in his field, like covered with hay, and the cows were eating on it in Funeral Home. I'm thinking he was one of the guys in the search party that scares Jess at the sorority house. Jess and Phil scares them when they show up and they're like peeking in the windows of the sorority house. So yes, that is a very true statement in a lot of ways. X-Ray, you say, I used to think Canadian acting was weird, but maybe that's just how Canadians are in regular life. Well, you know, I've known, so I have Canadian friends, and I even had a supervisor at the library here in Louisville that was from Canada. She has since moved back to Canada. And I think in a lot of ways they have a personality that's all their own. Um, that is that is very Canadian. It's just different than Americans or and I think it's a cultural thing. It's not a bad thing by any means. It's just just a different environment, probably different experiences growing up and all of that. But that doesn't mean they're not very nice people. They are very nice people, or at least the ones I've met are. Um, but like I was saying, the story about Bruno is similar to a Tales from the Dark Side episode. Um, I'm forgetting the title of it, but it was about a shoemaker who made special shoes for different people. Um, and Robert Romanus, or I think it was Robert Romanus, was on that from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Hey, Jay. Um, so I find that story similar to this story in this anthology movie, um, because Bruno ends up making the suit for Peter Cushing, and but what he doesn't know is this suit is for his son who is dead. So if anybody else puts on this suit, um, they're going to end up dead. Um, so it's kind of like, the wrong person, right suit, bad things end up happening. Right person, right suit, and everything's okay. Um, let's see. Then there's Barbara's story. Barbara is played by Charlotte Rampling, who got accused of murdering her brother and her nurse, uh, but she insists her friend Lucy, played by Britt Eklund, is responsible. Then there's Dr. Byron, played by Herbert Lom, who claims the ability to transfer his life force into a mechanical doll. All of these stories, in my opinion, are equally fun and creepy, and probably I would say the weakest of the bunch, which is unusual, is Bruno's story with Barry Morse and Peter Cushing. And I love Peter Cushing, and I'm not saying that the story's bad. I'm just saying if I had to pick a weak story in this group of stories, it would be that one. Uh, Now, Roy Ward Baker, he directed The Vault of Horror, which was another anthology film, and Now the Screaming Starts, which I also have, and produced by Amicus stalwarts Max J. Rosenberg and Milton Subtosky. So, on this DVD, it's been mastered in high definition from 35 millimeter vault materials. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the ending of this. So, I'm going to give you a 30 seconds or whatever for any of you listening or watching this. Plug your ears, please. Step away. Do whatever. If you're watching this later, you might want to fast forward it past it if you have not seen this movie. Okay? So, ready? We're gonna wait a few seconds and then I'm gonna go into this ending. Only because this is one of the creepiest endings I have seen in a movie, especially a PG rated movie. Okay? So, we'll wait a few more seconds. Okay. Spoiler now. Okay, so remember when I said that part of Dr. Martin's he has to use his skills. Maple Horror Anthologies. Well, not actually. I don't think any of these are Canadian, actually. But anyway, oh goodness. Also trying to thought again there. Okay, so remember when I said part of the thing that Dr. Rutherford wants, part of what he wants Dr. Martin to do is to figure out which of the patients upstairs is Dr. Starr. Okay, so he's met an attendant who's shown him several different patients, and then he is supposed to tell he's supposed to tell the attendant who he thinks is Dr. Starr. Okay, so a cons- several events happen towards the end of the film that culminates in another attendant being murdered by the crazed Dr. Starr. Byron's mechanical dolls do seemingly, he transfers his life force into those. So it's almost as if it's saying, hey, all these stories really did happen within the confines of this film, of course. Okay, so Dr. Martin ends up, searching for two of the attendants. He finds one of them dead, and then he ends up getting strangled by Dr. Starr. But this is not before you hear one of the creepiest laughs. I mean, I can't even describe it here. You guys would just have to see it, for yourself. And for those of you that have seen it, I really won't have to give it away because I'll just tell you that one of the attendants, and we know one of them got murdered. So the other attendant is Dr. Starr. But like I said, I cannot do the beginnings of the laugh. But the first time I watched, I was like, what in the hell is that? And then they actually showed Dr. Starr, and the maniacal look on his face when he is laughing is so damn realistic that I just got chills. And then he ends up strangling Dr. Martin in the final scenes. And at the very end of the movie, a new doctor comes and I believe meets Dr. Starr. Dr. Starr is there to meet this new doctor, and we assume everything's going to start all over again. Okay, so very well made movie in my opinion. One of my favorite horror anthology films. Like I said, there is a Blu-ray out if you're interested in getting the Blu-ray. I do eventually want to get the Blu-ray. You have some good special features on here. You have commentary by director Roy Ward Baker, which I don't think I've listened to it all. And cameraman Neil Benny. Featurette Inside the Fear Factory. And I think I did watch that, but it's been a while. Hey, Texas. You haven't missed much if you're just getting in here because we're still talking about the first movie, which is Asylum. You get cast and crew biographies, theatrical trailers, still gallery, and liner notes. So, anyway, that is Asylum, part of the Amicus collection. I highly recommend this one, especially if you've never seen it. You know, even if you don't want to buy it, if you just want to try it out or something, um, I'm sure you could probably find a copy somewhere. It may even be on YouTube. A lot of stuff's on YouTube anymore. So, yeah, I highly recommend this one. I'm probably going to highly recommend all of these. Guys, I'm going to take, and I hope I don't really get this in my teeth because that's kind of gross. But I did get some Thin Mint Girl Scout cookies, and so that's going to be my snack tonight. I'm going to take a bite of one of these, and then I'm going to get to the next film. I can never eat these cookies without getting some chocolate in my teeth. Do you guys know people that can eat anything and not have it show in their teeth? Because I don't know what it is about me, but I cannot keep stuff out of my teeth. Okay. So the next one is Trilogy of Terror, directed by Dan Curtis and starring Karen Black. And I recently got this one on Blu-ray from Kino Lorber. I got it just before Halloween a year or two ago, because this is another one of those horror anthology films that I watched when I was still living at home with my parents, probably in my, I don't know, mid to late 20s when I watched it for the first time. And I was just really wowed by it. And to me, it was on the level, definitely on the level of Asylum, but maybe slightly better. And Steve was actually watching a documentary on Dan Curtis, who many of you know also did Dark Shadows, and he did a bunch of other films and stuff as well. But this is an anthology film that stars Karen Black in all three of the stories. Oh yes, Dan Curtis also did The Night Stalker and The Night Strangler as well. This is supposed to be a brand new 4K restoration of it. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Three Colors Black featurette where they interview Karen Black here in just a second, because I just thought it was odd. But we'll get to that. So Dan Curtis basically took at least three stories from Richard Matheson, who did I Am Legend, Stir of Echoes, stuff like that. I just rewatched Stir of Echoes, by the way. I love that movie. I absolutely love it. And William F. Nolan, who did Logan's Run. Three tales of horrific suspense. And it was actually a made-for-television anthology. One of those really good made-for-television anthologies that showcases the tremendous acting talent of Karen Black, who also did Burnt Offerings, Day of the Locust, and as we all know, she did House of a Thousand Corpses as well. Texas, you say you saw Trilogy of Terror on its original broadcast. I was probably 8 or 9. See, I would have loved to have been able to. Um, but this was what, 75. So this came out 1 year before I was born. So that explains, why it was so long before I actually discovered this. And it's also not very long, it's only 72 minutes. Um, so we've got 3 stories. The first one is Julie. Karen Black, of course, plays Julie, who is a college professor, college English professor, who at first seems very shy and very reserved. You were 10, Texas? Okay. I mean, I think that's probably around 10 was when Steve started watching a lot of stuff. I don't think he watched anything hardcore at that time, but I'm sure he watched stuff, either Trilogy of Terror stuff similar to it. But, so Texas, I would say you're probably. So is 65 when you were born? Because I know that's on the end of your, I'm not trying to be nosy. I'm just thinking that you're just slightly older than Steve. Steve was born in 1969. Um, so if you were born in 65 and it was 75, then that would sound right. So anyway, so Julie seems. Okay, gotcha. Uh, Julie seems, like I said, a shy, reserved college professor, and an aggressive college student seduces and blackmails her. And just when he thinks he's got the upper hand, and like, you're 56, okay, yeah, but that's not old, Texas. And I tell Steve all the time that he's not old either, although he thinks he is. But some days I think I'm old too, and I'll be 46 on my birthday in June. Um, X-Ray, you say surprises Zuni fetish doll segment never got a proper remake. It's the only part of the anthology that people remember. I think that's the big one. It's not that the other 2 stories are forgettable. It's just that one just seems so out there and so bizarre. I think that is why that one seems to stand out more. It also seems more horrific in a lot of ways than the other 2 stories, unless you count Ooga Booga. Texas, you say it scared the hell out of you back then. Oh, I bet it did at the age of 10. Um, but so I'm taken from the way you guys are talking that you have seen this anthology film. You say SJWs will probably can't complain about the doll being racist. LOL. Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I don't know. I'm not even gonna go there. But anyways, um, because I am assuming, I hope not wrongly, that you guys that are in the chat here have seen this anthology film, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna wait a few seconds before I say it because I'm gonna reveal something and I don't want to spoil it for anybody that hasn't seen it. Okay, I'm going to tell you now. So, even though Julie seems like shy, reserved, this aggressive student thinks he's got the upper hand, that he's really, done something. This woman is practically a slave and he can get her to do anything. It turns out she's not so shy and reserved, and she actually ends up poisoning him because she's bored with him. She's played this game with him, and like I said, he thought he had the upper hand through most of the story. At the end, he finds out she was in control all along. And when she was done with him, she poisoned him, and that was it. And then the last scene of that story, another um, another college student is coming to her for some tutoring. And this is Gregory Harrison of Trapper John MD. And many of you will say, hey, yeah, that's Gregory Harrison when you see him. Um, X-Ray, you say, yeah, I saw it a long time ago in the 90s on VHS. The sequel sucked. Yeah, X-Ray, Steve got me a copy of the sequel, and I didn't really care for it, but I love this one. You said Karen Black was perfect for that movie. She was kind of a weird actress, underrated too. Um, she was great in Invaders from Mars, and yeah, she was in. And guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't she an Easy Rider? Wasn't she one of the prostitutes that Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda picked up at the House of Blue Lights or whatever? Wasn't it her and Tony Basil, or Basil, however you pronounce it, that they picked up there? Hey, Brandon. Brandon's back in here again. Let's see. Jay, you say never seen Trilogy of Terror, but if it's racist, I never will. Nah, Jay, I don't think you got to worry about being racist. So I think you can safely watch it. Texas, you say, love Karen Black. Just recently watched Five Easy Pieces. She was great in that. Now, Five Easy Pieces, Texas, that has Jack Nicholson in it, right? I would like to see that one. Okay, X-Ray, she said, yeah, she was one of the cemetery floozies. Well, I was surprised to see Tony Basil in this because at the time I didn't realize that Tony Basil was that old. But anyway, the next story is Millicent and Therese. And it's about two sisters who become increasingly hell bent on undoing the other. So Therese is the bad sister. Millicent is the good sister, it seems. It seems that, and that's the thing about these first two stories especially. You think you know what's going on, and then it turns out it's something totally different. Okay. Yeah, I want to watch Five Easy Pieces sometime. Unfortunately, that is one that I haven't had the pleasure of watching yet. Um, so you go through this, and Karen Black plays both sisters, but you're assuming that there really are two sisters. Um, George Gaines is also on this, playing the doctor, or psychiatrist, or what. I'm pretty sure he's like a psychiatrist. I didn't think he was just a medical doctor in this. Um, and John Carlin is in this. I knew because I watched Daughters of Darkness recently, as I said in one of my other live streams, and Stefan, I think was the guy's name in Daughter of Darkness. I was like, that's that dude that was, like Therese in Trilogy of Terror, and Millicent tries to tell him that Therese is trying to corrupt him, that uh, she's into voodoo and Satanism and all kinds of other stuff. And he gets really upset. But I knew that was John Carlin. Um, so, um, anyway, it goes through many different things until Millicent finally tells George Gaines, the doctor, that they won't need his services any longer, that she knows how to take care of Therese and get rid of her. Um, and basically, Millicent proceeds to use Therese's voodoo against her because she makes a voodoo doll. She puts some fabric from some of Teresa's clothing on it and some of her hair that she got from her hairbrush, her blonde hair, and then she stabs the doll. And the doctor ends up coming to the house because he's worried, especially about Millicent, and he comes to the house and finds Therese dead, but you don't see Millicent anywhere. Okay, so and I'm going to give away the ending, so if you haven't seen it, you might want to plug your ears. I'm going to wait for a few seconds and then I'm going to reveal the end of this story. Um, okay, I hope you're ready. So it turns out that, and you find this out. My phone was carrying on again. Um, you you find out that there are not. You find out through a phone call that the doctor has, um, where he calls the ambulance, and then the ambulance drivers come to the house and to retrieve Teresa's deceased body, and you hear a voiceover of George Gaines, the doctor, talking, and he says that it was the something about the most advanced case of multiple personality or split personality disorder that had ever been recorded. And he takes the wig off of Therese, wipes the makeup off of her, and you find out it's Millicent. There was no other sister. Millicent had just, her personality had split into Therese. And so there really weren't two sisters, there was only one woman acting as two people. Okay, so that was another really good story. The last story is Amelia, and again, Karen Black plays the title character of Amelia, about a woman who falls prey to a murderous Zuni fetish doll. And as I said, we've got George Gaines in this, we've got John Carlin in it, and also Gregory Harrison in it. The Zuni fetish doll Amelia segment is my absolute favorite of the three. I like all three, but I'll tell you, the ending shot when you know that the Zuni fetish doll has possessed Amelia, and she calls her mother and invites her over. After all, you know, her and her mother have a strained relationship, and she wasn't going to have her mother come over, but then after the Zuni fetish doll invades her body and her mind, so to speak, and takes possession of her, Amelia does end up calling her mother and asking her to come over. Then she walks over, sits down, or gets down into a squatting position. She's got a big butcher knife, and she starts beating it on the floor. And as she does, the camera zooms in on her face, and she opens her mouth, and it's full of razor sharp teeth, just like the Zuni fetish doll. That is, again, one of the creepiest scenes I have ever seen in a movie. And, you know, it doesn't, when they do these subtle things like that, and then it builds up to something like that, or, you know, I think it works a lot better than showing you a bunch of shock scares. Because in all these segments, you have a moody atmosphere, you have women that appear to be one thing when they start, and it ends up being totally different by the end, due to different circumstances in each story. I don't know, X Ray. That's a good question. I almost think the Zuni fetish doll would win against Stephen Chucky, because that little booger's fast. Um, and I mean, I saw Chucky run across the floor and stuff in the first Child's Play movie, but Chucky has nothing on this Zuni fetish doll, in my opinion. And so there was another thing I wanted to mention. Texas, you say I'm going for Zuni. He's got a spear. Yeah. Um. Hey, TJ Frizzy. Um. You say Karen Black came up with the teeth ending and the whole conversation on the phone with her mom. Yeah, I think I remembered in the interview that they did with her that she said something to that effect. X-Ray, you say Zuni is very overpowered. He'd whoop the Toulon puppets' asses. Reggie, what are you doing? Reggie's in here. Hi, buddy. Reggie, I guess he wants to be on the live stream. Y'all can't really see him, but he's right here beside me. So I wonder he hasn't raised up on my chair yet. Usually he does. Well, but I think I'm gonna let him out real quick here. I will be right back. I'll let y'all see the lovely Evil Dead background. Maybe. Wes, you want to know what the hell's going on here? Well, having five dogs, has its perks, but also has its drawbacks sometimes, which means I have to let them in or out or, take care of them in some way. It's like having kids. You gotta take care of your doggies. Um, Thank you, TJ Frizzy, for letting Wes know that I took took a doggy break. But what I was going to bring up before I go over the special features here, I do apologize. Reggie's already ready to come back in, so hold on. Okay, guys, I'm back once again. Um, just adjusting my camera a little bit there. Um, Hopefully, I won't have to do that too much more. I do apologize. It's not very professional for me to have to get up and down all the time, but I gotta do what I gotta do. But anyway, um, what I was gonna bring up was several or many moons ago there was a company called Majestic something or other. I can't remember the full name of it. Maybe somebody can help me out here. That put out the Zuni fetish doll. I wish 1,000 times that I had known about this thing when it came out so I could have got one, because they go for $300 or more on eBay now. And you cannot get anybody to lower, you know how you get on eBay and you'll find something you really want and they'll say like $300 or best offer, or $275 or best offer. But what they should really say is, I'm not going any less than 300. I'm not going any less than 275, because every offer you offer them, and I think I gave them reasonable offers. I mean, I didn't try to lowball them or anything with those. But they always say no. It's like, well, you don't want to sell it very, very badly, do you? So, unfortunately, I've not been able to obtain one of these. Goodness. It's not Brandon barking out there, because the poor old thing, he can barely hear. But I think it's the neighbor dog on the other side. But I would still really like to get my hands on one, because that thing looks almost exactly like the Zuni fetish doll in the story. So, if anybody sees one reasonably priced, could you please let me know? Unless, of course, you want to get it, and I'm not going to begrudge anybody to be able to get one. So, as far as special features on this one, you get audio commentary by film historian Richard Harlan Smith, an interview with composer Bob Colbert, audio commentary with Karen Black and writer William F. Nolan, Richard Matheson Terror Scribe featurette, the Three Colors Black featurette. Now, this is the weird thing that I was going to talk about. And for those of you that have either seen this featurette on the DVD and or the Blu-ray, you'll know what I'm talking about. Karen Black seems very, and this of course was an old interview. I'm not sure exactly how old, but it was quite a bit older than, House of a Thousand Corpses and stuff like that. So maybe she changed her views or whatever. But basically, during the entire interview, she talks about how she doesn't like horror movies. She likes sci-fi stuff. How these stories were sci-fi. And I'm wanting to ask how. Of course, you can't ask Karen Black now, bless her heart. Bless her soul. She's no longer with us. But, if, I wouldn't have been rude about it, but if I'd ever gotten a chance to meet her, I think I would have asked about that particular interview, because she went from saying stuff like that to being in House of a Thousand Corpses, which would be the furthest thing from science fiction that I could think of. And here she was many moons ago talking about how she didn't really like horror movies, how these three stories in Trilogy of Terror, even though it was called Trilogy of Terror, she wanted to call them all science fiction fantasy films. Maybe fantasy, but I don't know. I just didn't get what she was trying to say at that time. Or who she was trying to impress or please or whatever. So it was just a very odd interview. Yeah, X-Ray. That's what I'm saying. She was great as Mama Firefly. But would you agree with me that that is as far from, like, that role definitely in that movie's got to be as far from science fiction type films as you can get. Um, Texas, you say she was probably just going where the money was at. Yeah, that's a possibility too. Um, Guys, I'm hoping this will be the last time I have to put up the old Evil Dead background, but Brandon's barking to be let in, so hold on just 1 second. Okay. Oh, really sorry, guys, and hopefully he won't start barking. As you can see, I'm not used to wearing my hair down because I keep pulling it back because it kind of gets in my way, but just wanted to try something different with this live stream. Um, just a little note, and people can remind Steve of this when he starts saying, "Oh, it was all Dana's idea to switch to AT&T fiber from Spectrum cable internet." I still haven't had any drop frames. My connection is still staying in the green. So I am, I'm perfectly, right now I'm perfectly happy with this internet. Brandon, go lay down, baby. Okay. So you also get a limited edition booklet essay by film critic and author Simon Abrams and newly commissioned art by Jacob Phillips, which is this artwork, which I think is really cool. Okay. Like I said, that's Trilogy of Terror with Karen Black in all three of the stories. Great little anthology film. Highly, highly recommend it if you've never seen it. It's been a while since you've seen it. Um, I highly recommend that you watch it again. This, I mean, I can watch it anytime, but for some reason, this movie gives me a fall vibe. So I usually watch it in the fall, close to Halloween. Um, I mean, I really don't know why, except it gives me a fall like feel. So, and maybe because it's one of those older, movies that was made for TV, and it, even though it's on Blu-ray and everything, and the colors are good and stuff, it still has that washed out look to it, and that just makes me think of fall when I see stuff like that. And TJ Frizzy, you say you still have the old DVD and haven't upgraded yet. Well, I can honestly say that this is probably about the best this is ever going to look. I mean, being as it was a made for TV movie, we can't expect it to look as well as something that was released theatrically. Um, but it does look very, very good on the Blu ray, and I would highly recommend it if you were kind of, just on the fence about whether you should get it or not. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about, and you guys probably knew I was going to have this one in here, being the huge Stephen King fan and George Romero fan that I am, is Creepshow. And this is the Scream Factory release that was put out. So you get, this really this case that the Blu-ray goes in is kind of like the cases that they did for the Halloween series. But this has a lot cooler artwork, in my opinion, than the what was done for the Halloween films. Um, you also get a little booklet. There's Stephen King. There's Jordy Verrill. It's got a lot of nice color pictures in it. There's Nate back there. We got blurry for a little bit. There he is. Okay. And of course, you get the Blu-ray that I've switched around to the original artwork for it. I love the picture of the creep, like, I'm guessing it's like he's getting a ticket to go see the movie. It says the most fun you'll ever have being scared. I love that tagline, but I don't honestly remember being scared when I watched this, but I had a good time. It was definitely fun time. And this is one of the few movies that I like where Roger Ebert actually gave it a good review. He said Romero and King have approached this movie with humor and affection, as well as an appreciation of the macabre. So, in my opinion, I think that's high praise coming from, excuse me, Roger Ebert. X-Ray says it's one of the best comic book movies ever. And the only one that freaked me out was The Crate. The Crate is a standout story, I think. The only thing, and I'll say this up front, I think the only thing this movie possibly suffers from is it might have been better if they had split up the stories evenly, and maybe put one or so of these in Creepshow 2. But that's just my opinion. I actually have the Creepshow comic book as well. That, was pretty much set up, graphic novel, comic book. I mean, they're pretty much the same, but a graphic novel is essentially the binding and stuff like that. It's more sturdy. It's more book-like. X-Ray, you say, I got a weird history with Creepshow. I was so used to watching the TV version, which cut out the cockroach segment. I didn't know it even existed until the 2000s. Yeah, I believe I remember that because, but fortunately, I think the first time I ever watched Creepshow was on a VHS tape. Either a VHS tape or I possibly watched it on satellite or something where they left everything in. But I think I do recall watching it on TV much later, and I was like, where's the cockroach segment? Because, yeah, they cut it completely out. This came out in 1982. The approximate feature running time is plus or minus. It actually says plus or minus 120 minutes, but I do think it runs, with all the segments, it runs about 2 hours. Adrienne Barbeau pretty much cemented herself as a I don't want to say scream queen because I don't know. I don't know if I would consider Adrienne Barbeau a scream queen, because it's not like she was an old maid or a little old lady in the movies, but she seemed to have a certain sense of maturity to her that a lot of the other scream queens did not have at the time. So I don't know what we could call her, but but You say pretty juicy rose for most of the women in Creepshow. Cleavage queen. And although this isn't, in my opinion, I don't think this look is the best look for Adrienne Barbeau. I think probably her one of her sexiest looks was as Stevie Wayne in The Fog, with that voice and that long hair and stuff. And in this, her hair is sort of almost too curly. She's the naggy wife, and to me, she looked okay. I'm just saying, if I was a guy, I think I would go for more like the sultry Stevie Wayne type, rather than this Adrienne Barbeau of the nagging, belittling wife in the Crate episode of Creepshow. Um, so we've got 5 stories that are supposed to be in the style of the classic 50s horror comics. You know, those horror comics that they wanted to get banned, and um, you didn't want your parents finding out you had a stack of them under your bed, and all of that. Yeah, X-Ray, more of a cult actress. I would agree with that. And the movie made her seem older than she was. Yeah, that I agree with that too. And I guess that was the way it was supposed to work. Yeah, TJ Frizzy, she does look good in the Swamp Thing, uh, which was around the same time as Creepshow. Yes, we don't want to forget the great Tom Atkins. And if I can get Darcy on here, we're definitely going to talk about Tom Atkins, because Tom Atkins and Clint Howard, I know she loves those guys. Um, so we'll definitely have to make time to talk about both of those actors. Um, so the first story, Father's Day, is about an old man who is murdered by his daughter, played by Vivica Linford's, uh, who um, was fell in love, I guess, with a much older man, and her father was always jealous of her and afraid that people were going to take his money, because he was a rich old miser that didn't care for anybody, even his own family. So he basically drives his daughter to kill him, and he ends up coming back on many years later, for Father's Day, and taking his revenge on the family for what had happened to him. And a little note that you may or may not know: John Amplas played uh, some of the zombified Nate, um, in the movie. So, and many of you will remember that John Amplas was in Day of the Dead. I think he was one of the scientists in Day of the Dead. He was Martin on Martin. So, and when he was on Martin, that very young John Amplas, I had such a crush on him. And when I met John Amplas a few years back, I actually told him about that, and he thought that was sweet. Um, but the next story, um, is about a meteor that crash lands in this country bumpkin farmer's on his land. And the farmer is played expertly, I think, by Stephen King, who makes the quote, the great quote, meteor shit, when he gets the stuff that oozes out of the meteor on him. and he ends up growing. Well, he basically, by the end of the story, turns into a giant plant. Um, you say John Amplis should have had a bigger career. Martin was sort of like Romero's version of Taxi Driver. That's interesting take, X-Ray. I hadn't thought of that. Um, uh, let's see. I wish John Amplis had had a bigger career too. I love that guy. X-Ray said the Meteor story was like a comedy version of Color Out of Space. Hadn't thought of that either. Um, TJ Freezy, you say King's best role, LOL. Um, yeah, I also liked his cameo role in Creepshow too, and I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit. Um, but I think Stephen King totally uh, makes this story. I think if you had put anybody else in that role, that it wouldn't have been as effective and as enjoyable as it was. So moving on to the third story, um, basically a belittled, put down professor chooses his wife as a snack for a crated creature that's discovered at the college. Um, Fluffy, as the creature was affectionately called by cast and crew alike, um, was the creation of Tom Savini. And I think literally a lot of the stuff where the creature is attacking people and stuff was the Fluffy puppet. But it was very well made. Um, I know a lot of, well, maybe not a lot of people, but there are certain people who love to collect the Creepshow memorabilia. And if you've got the money, I mean, you can get cool things like replicas of Fluffy and things like that. I unfortunately do not have the financial ways and means to be able to get stuff like this, but it would be awesome if I could. Um, let's see, and then the next story actually has Leslie Nielsen as a crazed husband who finds out that his wife is cheating on him with Ted Danson of Cheers fame. Um, and so when he finds out about her having an affair, and the wife is played by none other than Galen Ross or Alexis Dubin for for you Madman fans out there. Um, and So he ends up, kidnapping both of them, putting them on the beach that he owns. So nobody else is on this beach. And separating them by quite a ways because they can't see each other except on this closed circuit TV setup that he's got. He buries them up to their neck in the sand. They're immobile. They can't move. Only their head sticking out of the sand. And as the tide comes in, eventually the tide's going to come in and it's not going to go back out. Ends up drowning them. He thinks, great, they're gone. Goodbye. I'm gotten rid of the cheater, or cheaters. Well, as in the old 50s comics, Leslie Nielsen's character gets his comeuppance when the um, wife and her lover come back from the dead and end up burying Leslie Nielsen's character up to his neck in the sand. And the last thing he says is, I can hold my breath for a long time. And then the tide starts coming in at the end of the story. The last story has E.G. Marshall as a insectphobe and germaphobe. Um, and it seems that he's a very evil man. He laughs when he finds out that some guy that he had pretty much like taken over a company that this guy worked for, and it's going to make this guy destitute. You know, he's not going to be able to survive. The guy ends up killing himself. And, you know, when the wife of this unfortunate man calls to tell E.G. Marshall's character of Mr. Pratt what a monster he is, he basically laughs at her. And she tells him she hopes he dies. And essentially that's what ends up happening. The cockroaches take over his apartment, and they end up taking over his body, and the final scene is E.G. Marshall's character dead, but then all these cockroaches bust out of his body and start crawling all over the place. So if you're scared of bugs, you know, any kind of creepy crawlies, you might not appreciate this segment very well. This segment is called They're Creeping Up on You. You know, I'm not a fan of spiders, so, you know, I've watched some horror movies with spiders. I've watched Kingdom of the Spiders and Arachnophobia and stuff like that. But I still, you know, I tend to get the heebie-jeebies when I see something like Kingdom of the Spiders, and you got these tarantulas crawling up people's legs and a bunch of them falling out of the ceiling, and all of that. I may have to do like a creature live stream at some point about spider movies, snake movies, rat movies, you know, any of that stuff. Squirm, which is basically electrified worms that go crazy. TJ Frizzy, you say Romero's ex-wife plays the wife who's talking with Barbeau's character in the party scene in the crate. Yes, that is certainly George Romero's ex-wife in that scene. You're exactly right. X-Ray, you say the final story has some of Savini's best work. If it was made today, it would be CGI and shit. Yeah, and that's unfortunate that we don't see a lot of the old school special effects anymore, because I'll tell you, having all of those real hissing cockroaches, they were essentially Madagascar hissing cockroaches, and a lot of those scenes, a lot of the cockroaches were those type. There were a few other different types in there. And a little side note about Madagascar hissing cockroaches. They do hiss, because back when I was working for Hancock County Public Library many, many moons ago now, one year for summer reading, the theme for summer reading was bugs. So any library that wanted to get their own Madagascar hissing cockroach, all they had to do was ask and they could get one. So we got one, but because everybody else was scared of it, I was the one that ended up taking care of the little guy. And he was, you know, he was very interesting. They ended up having a drawing, and one of the kids that came to summer reading ended up winning the Madagascar hissing cockroach and got to take him home. But, you know, this is kind of mean, and I wouldn't advocate doing this to the poor little guy. But we didn't actually hurt him, but some of the people on the staff were afraid to touch him. So they would just kind of poke him with the eraser on a pencil. Not the sharp end of the pencil, just the eraser. And he would let out a that sounded like air escaping from a balloon. And so they actually do hiss, and they're interesting little creatures. He was also an escape artist. He managed to escape from his little enclosure at least twice. And it was like, Dana, the cockroach is loose. You got to go find it. And so thankfully, both times I was able to find him. And I don't know what happened to him after he went to the child's home. I hope he lived a long and healthy life. Um, but anyway, that's just a little side note on that. Um, so let's see. Special features on this. You get a new 4K scan of the original camera negative, supervised and approved by director of photography Michael Gornick. New audio commentary with Michael Gornick, New Terror and the Three Rivers, which this is very good. This is a roundtable discussion with members of the cast and crew of Creepshow. New The Comic Book Look, an interview with costume designer Barbara Anderson. New The Colors of Creepshow, a look at the restoration of Creepshow with Michael Gornick. Audio commentary director George A. Romero and special makeup effects creator Tom Savini. Audio interviews with Michael Gornick, actor John Amplas, property master Bruce Allen Miller, and makeup effects assistant Daryl Ferrucci. Tom Savini's behind the scenes footage, which is always great. Any of the movies that Tom Savini worked on where you can see the behind the scenes footage, it's great. You get another great Horror's Hallowed Grounds with Sean Clark. I look at the original locations today. Deleted scenes, theatrical trailer, TV spot, radio spots, still galleries, and more. And that is Creepshow. Or if you want to see the other cover art, there it is. If you've never seen Creepshow, I don't know how much more highly I could recommend this thing, but it's another one I say walk or run, don't walk. Get this movie and watch it, even if you have to, borrow it from a friend or whatever. X-Ray, you say you flew back to Madagascar. Well, I just hope he lived a long and healthy life because he, I know we're talking about a cockroach, and these guys usually. I think Tom Savini said this, that these guys live in caves and basically eat bat poop. So, you're probably thinking, ew, gross, But they are interesting creatures. They're part of our ecological system. If we didn't have cockroaches, I know people complain about them and say they're nasty little creatures. And I honestly don't want them crawling around in my house. But they do serve a purpose. You know, after all, what would happen to all this bat poop if they didn't consume it? So anyway, I know I'm being silly, but yeah. Okay, so that is Creepshow. Highly, highly recommend this one. I need to watch it again here real soon because that is one of my favorites. The next one, of course, is Creepshow 2. This is the Arrow release of this. The tagline for Creepshow 2 is when the curtain goes up, the terror begins, which is another great tagline. In this sequel, you only have 3 stories instead of 5. So that's what I mean when I say that the only thing I think the original Creepshow suffers from is they had too many great stories crammed into this one movie, and maybe it would have been better to spread them out a little bit between the 2 films. But maybe they didn't know there was going to be a Creepshow 2. Maybe they weren't even thinking about it when they made the first Creepshow. Yeah, I agree, X-Ray, that it is underrated. And this, before I get into this, I'll tell another little anecdote or we'll take a little side trip of a story that concerns Creepshow 2. Many of you will remember I talked about in several live streams about my parents used to go to the drive-in. Well, this one came out, I believe, in 87, maybe. And there were still a few drive-ins around close by, and I remember my mom and dad. I don't know why this time, unless it was like um, a special occasion where they just wanted it to be them and not have kids with them. Um, Being as it had been many years since they were able to like go to a drive-in movie and not have kids tagging along. So we stay with my aunt and uncle, which, at the time was fine with me because we was staying with my Aunt Sandy and Uncle Scotty. And they always had the best snacks at the house. They would get us pizza and they had potato chips and soft drinks. And, um, basically they would let us have anything within reason that we wanted. And we also got to watch cool movies with them and everything. So, um, Sandy and Scotty were actually the ones that took me to see Teen Wolf at the theater. Uh, and that was a great experience for me personally. Um, so, anyway, um, George Romero and Stephen King return again to deliver yet another selection of blood curdling tales and Creepshow 2. The first story is Old Chief Woodenhead, that has George Kennedy in it. And Old Chief Woodenhead is actually this wooden Indian outside of a small shop owned by George Kennedy's character, Ray Spruce, who I believe, yes, Stephen King's maiden name is Spruce. So Ray and Martha Spruce, the married couple, older married couple that run this little shop, was more than likely the last name came from Stephen King's wife's Tabitha, her maiden name. So, this shows you what a huge Stephen King fan I am, all this little trivia I've got here and there. Um, yeah, I couldn't see Old Chief Woodenhead getting made unless there were major changes to it, which would really defeat the whole purpose of them making it. Um, and actually, one of the guys, there are several Native Americans, I guess I should say, and not Indians, Native Americans portrayed in this first story. But the thing is, and I think they said this in the commentary and stuff, that none of these people were real Native Americans, especially the guy Sam, who is not a very nice guy, who ends up killing the couple that owns the store and taking um, a treasure that belongs to his people. His uncle had brought it as kind of like something for Ray Spruce to keep until the tribe could pay their debt to him for things that they had purchased on credit, so to speak, at his store. And he had told him, if we cannot pay in 2 autumns, then the treasure is yours. Well, Sam wants the treasure all to himself. He doesn't care about his family. He doesn't care about the tribe. He just wants to escape this place and go out to Hollywood. And if that means murdering the couple that owns the store and taking the treasure of his people or the tribe, then he's going to do that. Um, Also, Hal Holbrook's son plays one of the friends of Sam. Um, and I don't know how many of you guys have seen Girls Night Out, but Hal Holbrook is also in that with his son. They don't play father and son in the movie. And also, Hal Holbrook is in the Crate episode from Creepshow. Jordan Peele's Woodenhead, the reboot. Oh Lord, I hope not. Um, so anyway, it turns out that old Chief Woodenhead is not just any wooden statue out in front of a store. He ends up coming to life and getting revenge on Sam and his two friends for the murder of Ray and Martha Spruce. Um, so the second one I think is probably my favorite of the three, although I have a special affinity for the Hitchhiker, which I'm going to talk about next. But The Raft is about a group of, you guessed it, hoarding teens wishing they'd read the warning signs first before taking a dip in a remote lake. Um, and basically, they go out to this raft. There's nobody else on this lake, there's nobody on the beach because it's almost, I think it's almost October, I think they say. And so the water is really cold when they get in there, but they manage to make it to the raft. But just before the two girls with the two guys gets to the raft, Randy, one of the guys, sees something that looks like a great big giant hefty trash bag in the water, and it starts moving towards the girls, and he gets frightened and tells the girls to hurry up, get on the raft. Then whatever this thing is slowly starts attacking them one by one, and when it gets on their skin, whatever this creature is, it works like acid and just literally melts their skin off. So I really like this one. I like the way it's set up. It's kind of a old fashioned creature horror story with a few modern elements for 1987. You said, actually, you said The Raft is the kind of thing Eli Roth thinks he's making. You know, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Ever since I saw Eli Roth, Joe Bob did an interview with Eli Roth on the last drive-in. I have, I understand him more. He no longer does he seem to be this cocky asshole trying to make movies and all that. He really seemed like a genuine fan when he was talking to Joe Bob. But but that's certainly possible that he believes that he's making something like The Raft. I wouldn't doubt it. Um, so the third story, which it's hard for me to pick a favorite between The Raft and The Hitchhiker because I like both of them so well. And I like Old Chief Woodenhead. Um, but Old Chief Woodenhead is basically a revenge story. Uh, and I guess you could say The Hitchhiker is too. But they seem to have, those last two stories seem to have a little extra oomph to them, in my opinion. And maybe that's why I like them a little better. TJ Frizzy, you say Pat Tallman, who plays Barbara in Night of the Living Dead remake, plays the first girl when she's dying in the water, because that was a stunt scene. They didn't have that actor Paige Hanna do. Well, I didn't know that, TJ Frizzy, but that's good information. I knew that Pat Tallman did a lot of special effects, or not special effects, stunt work. That makes perfect sense that they would use her in that scene. And I feel like Pat Tallman has sorta, or probably at that time had sort of the same body type and hair type as Paige Hanna did at the time. So that was probably a good choice. But this is the story of a woman who's having an affair, or maybe she's just paying a guy for sex every once in a while. But I assumed it was like she was having an affair. Um, and so she realizes that the guy that she's sleeping with, his alarm didn't go off, and she's going to be late getting home. So she's kind of in a hurry when she leaves this guy's house or his apartment or whatever. And she's also smoking, which I'm not saying anything bad about people that smoke. My mom smokes. I wish she didn't for her health. But I'm not one of these people that hates people that smoke. But smoking in this case gets her in trouble because she ends up like dropping this hot cigarette on her, burning herself. It distracts her totally from the road. When she looks back up, she's headed straight for a hitchhiker on the side of the road. She hits him, and then it's basically a hit and run because she gets scared. She leaves the scene of the accident. Stephen King actually shows up in another cameo role just after the accident. A couple in a car show up. Stephen King pulls up in his big semi truck, and this might be one that wouldn't get filmed today because people might consider it racist. Because one of the first things Stephen King's character says when he hops out of his semi truck is, "Black guy, huh?" Like that. Like, people might take it as, what are you saying? Only black people get are involved in hit and runs. You never know what people are going to say nowadays. But, and then again, they might not think it's racist. But, you just never know. TJ Frizzy, you say, yeah, he's a man. Oh, LOL. And you also say, it's funny when people have Paige Hannah sign that photo of her. Yeah, I bet that's weird. Weird for Paige Hannah when she signs it. So basically, she's like, all strung out. She doesn't know what to do. But then this guy keeps showing up saying, "Thanks for the ride, lady," and trying to kill her in the process. And I really think that one is well made as well. Um, but we have some special features on this one as well. We get a brand new 2K restoration from the original film elements. Um, let's see. You get 5.1 surround sound. Audio commentary director Michael Gornick. Poncho's Last Ride, a brand new interview with actor Daniel Beer. The Road to Dover, a brand new interview with actor Tom Wright, who played the hitchhiker. Screenplay for a sequel, an interview with screenwriter George A. Romero. Tales from the Creep, an interview with actor and makeup artist Tom Savini, who, by the way, Tom Savini does play the Creep in the movie. Nightmares in Foam Rubber archive featurette on the special effects of Creepshow 2, including interviews with FX artists Howard Berger and Greg Nicotero. There was also a little bit of a special effects snafu in this film, and I believe Howard Berger may talk about it on this disc, but don't hold me to that, where he talks about another special effects artist worked on the film prior and essentially got booted or fired or whatever because he messed some stuff up. My friend Rick Berger on his special effects mentor, Rick Baker. Behind the scenes footage, image gallery, trailers, and TV spots. And there's also the original screenplay, which is BD-ROM content, and Reversible Sleep featuring original and newly commissioned artwork by Mike Saputo. And I have got the original artwork on here just because I like it so well, but this artwork is good too, as you can see there. Let me slide that out just a little bit so you can see it a little better. Okay, so now I gotta put this back in there, guys. Hold on just 1 second. told you I take these things out and then I can't get them back in, right? And I don't like to bend them or anything. That's what you get for taking them out, dang it. Sorry, guys. I really don't. And then the little booklet fell out, didn't it? Oh, boy. Okay. So let's put that disc in there. TJ Frizzy, you say both Creepshow movies had great soundtracks too. The first is a classic. I actually have it on vinyl, the first one. Very spooky, surreal electronic music in the first. And actually, I believe music was composed by Les Reed and Rick Wakeman on Creepshow 2. Okay. So, here's, I'm getting ready to talk about another one that came out in 1989, which I didn't hear about for a long time, and you guys may or may not be familiar with it, but it is After Midnight. You notice the tagline is Terror Has No Curfew. I think the first time I saw this was probably on satellite. It was one of those things like Happy Hell Night that I just discovered by accident. But this one has, I thought it had basically three stories and then a wraparound. Okay, so the movie starts out with the wraparound story of two female college students, who are going to a class called Psychology of Fear. Yeah, Texas, I don't have a curfew. It's going on 10 o'clock here, and we've got two more movies that I want to cover after this one. One of the girls, played by Jillian McWhirter, is frightened about, tells her friend she's had a nightmare and she doesn't know how she feels about going to this class that her friend has talked her into attending. And her friend's like, don't be such a wimp. Let's just go and see what it's all about. So this is a very unusual class and a very unusual professor who, first of all, tells them that there will be no textbook for the class. They won't be required to, read a bunch of books, because he thinks that for him to teach this class properly, he needs to teach them about real fear instead of having them read stuff in textbooks and read case studies and all of that. So there's this one cocky jock type guy in the front of the room, and like the first thing he says when the professor says that they won't have any books and any textbooks or anything, he's like, all right, no fucking books. And so the professor proceeds to ask them what they're afraid of. Are you afraid of bugs? Are you afraid of dark places? Different things like that. And the jock guy says, flunking this class. And he says, the professor walks up to him and he says, so that's the only thing that scares you? And he laughs and he says, that and girls who say no. So the professor kind of gives him this look, kind of takes a step back and says, so if I was to tell you that a monster is going to crash through that wall and tear your heads off, you wouldn't believe me. Because from experience, you know that that's something that would never happen. And then he says, well, what if I told you I was going to pull out a gun, put it to someone's head, and blow his brains out? And he asked them if they would be scared. And the jock says, of course not. Why would I be scared of something I know you'll never do? But that's exactly what he ends up doing, is pulling out a gun, pointing it at the class. He doesn't blow anybody's brains out. And then he tells the class, are you, well, he does put it to the guy that was smarting off. He does put it to his head, and the guy gets really upset and ends up pissing on himself in front of everybody. And then, the professor pulls the trigger, and it just clicks. There were never any bullets in the gun at all, it seems. So when the jock realizes that he's peed on himself in front of everybody, he's so humiliated he runs out of the class. So the professor looks at everybody and he says I said I couldn't scare him, but we saw how wrong he really was. And then he tells them, are you ready to be scared? He says, I am. And it looks like he shoots himself in the head and falls back against the wall. And the class is just dumbfounded, shocked, horrified. They can't believe this has happened. This is probably another movie that wouldn't get made now. So then they slowly gasp because they realize that he's not dead. He had to have blanks in there, and he had like a blood pack on the back of his head. And then there's nervous laughter, like you get when you go to the movies and you see something really scary. And then at first everybody's like, like that. And then it's laughter is usually the second thing that happens. So the same thing happens in this class. So, Brandon, stop doing that, buddy. He's back there beating and banging on my scales in there, which he does to get my attention. So the jock ends up going to the dean of students and tells him what happened. And so I'm assuming that the professor gets reprimanded for what he did. So the next time they come to class, of course, the jock never returns, but he is plotting his revenge all the while. So, Brandon. But when the rest of the students come back to class the next time, the professor tells them that there are some people at the college that disapprove of his teaching methods. So now they've got to read books, their comprehension, which will be tested on a periodic basis. So he then tells them that no one can stop him from having private seminars at his home. If they want to come to his home, they can sit around and tell scary stories to each other, basically. He tells them he can't give them extra credit, but they will gain some knowledge that will be very beneficial to them. So a select group of the students end up showing up at the professor's house, including Gillian McWhirter's character and Pamela Siegel, her friend. They show up, and several of the other students show up. Once they get in the house, the professor leads the group, and everybody almost ends up telling a story. So the professor starts out, and he tells the story of a man and wife who are having a special birthday dinner, and the wife insists on paying for the dinner. The husband is played by Mark McClure, who was in several movies. For any of you that have seen I Want to Hold Your Hand, he plays one of the friends of the girls that helps them. Hey, Derek, you said better late than never, huh? That's exactly right. Anybody is welcome anytime to my live streams. And we still got, this movie and a couple more to cover, so you haven't missed a whole heck of a lot, Dirk. Just me rambling, pretty much. So, the husband and wife had this very nice dinner. The wife insists on paying. Then she says, why don't they take the long way home? And at first he's like, I got to get up early in the morning. Maybe we could do it another time. She finally talks him into it, as we wives can do sometimes. Um, and so what this turns out to be is this a whole setup for her to get him to this old house where something horrible was supposed to have happened years and years ago, where a man killed his entire family. Um, and then may have committed suicide. I can't recall right now. Um, but so I don't know if somebody would really be able to get away with putting tacks in the road on purpose to set up like a surprise birthday party for their husband. I think that would be against the law to do that, but whatever. It's in the confines of the movie. So they end up running over the tacks, get a flat tire, um, and so she basically ends up telling him, she was like, do you want to wait out here in the cold for somebody who may or may not come by to help us, or do we go up to that old spooky house and try to see if they've got a phone we could use to call a tow truck? So he finally relents and agrees that probably the best bet is to go up to the spooky old house where some people had gotten murdered years ago. See if the owners have a phone. So you love anthologies, Dirk? Well, you are definitely at the right place then. Um, the wife ends up going in the house first through a window because the door's locked, and the husband doesn't think it's a good idea to do this, and she's like, don't be such a baby, um, just boost me up so I can get in the window and I'll come around and unlock the door. Well, the door gets unlocked, but his wife is nowhere to be found. So he's, going around this spooky old house in the dark, calling for his wife, Joni, Joni, Joan, you know. So towards the end of this story, he finds these skulls, these 5 skulls with bugs crawling all over them, and like he has to shake the bugs off his hand and stuff like that. Then he hears his wife screaming, and these doors slide open, and he sees what appears to be the man who beheaded his family with some big old shears. But then the door's closed, and it's revealed that it's his wife, Joan, with some kind of thing over her head and on her back that makes it look like a man with these big shears going like this. And she's screaming on the other side of this costume. And you see that there are a whole bunch of people in this room with a birthday cake and all this stuff. And she's telling them, she said, he's going to kill me, but this is going to be one birthday he's never going to forget. So it goes into slow motion, and she's counting off 1, 2, 3, and then the doors slide open, and she's slowly turning around with the cake in her hand. He, meanwhile, has gotten a big, sharp sword. I guess she didn't count on him finding something like that. And he's meaning to behead the person that he thinks is the killer and that has probably killed his wife. And he cannot stop the forward movement of this sword until it's too late. and then he sees his wife's face, and she's like, slowly her mouth opens up, face drains of color, all that, and you hear that sword connect with what appears to be her neck. The head goes flying, and then the story ends. And the students ask the professor what happened to him, and he basically um, ended up in a mental hospital, and then ended up killing himself like a year later. Um, so then it moves on to one of the students telling a story about three girls. No, actually, it's four girls that end up going uh, in LA. I believe it's LA, somewhere in California, where they go to this club and they're underage, but they have a plan to be able to get in. Well, the one girl who was on Mr. Belvedere, I don't know how many of you guys remember Mr. Belvedere. I used to love that show back when I was a kid. But anyway, she was one of the kids on Mr. Belvedere. Um, but she's the driver of the car. She's the one that gets them to this club. And they give her a cigarette and they say, "This will make you look older." She ends up coughing when they get up to the guy that either lets you into this club or doesn't let you into the club. And so, needless to say, they don't get in the club. One of the girls is Judy Aronson, who you will remember from Friday the 13th, the final chapter, the one that gets killed on the raft. And the other girl, or one of the other girls, the blonde girl, is the one, I believe, on Nightmare on Elm Street 3, where Freddy says, "Welcome to the primetime, bitch," and puts her head through the television. And I'm not sure about the redheaded girl in this, what she may or may not have been in. But anyway, so they end up leaving that club, and Judy Aronson's character says that she knows another club that they could definitely get in, and they end up in this creepy warehouse district where there's no other cars or anything. And, these gas stations that look like nobody's, patronized them in, years. And it turns out that Amy, the girl that the one that's got the car, didn't really check her gas gauge, and then they start running out of gas, and they're stuck in this creepy part of LA. Oh, Curly Jaws, you say my top anthology films, Trick or Treat and VHS. Actually, if I do a second one, oh, Curly Jaws, I'm going to talk definitely about Trick or Treat. I didn't want to overwhelm you guys too much with too many movies, so I did include it in this one. But I definitely, if I do a second part, which I'm planning on, I will cover that one. So they end up almost totally running out of gas. So they see this gas station, they pull in there, but it's obviously a gas station that's not been used in probably a century or more. I'm being sarcastic, but basically the pumps were the nozzle was loose from the pumps, and there was obviously no gas in them. Well, there's this crazy guy with some mean dogs camping out there, and he basically attacks the girls, and they get in the car and they try to leave, and he jumps on their car. They end up killing him, but then his dogs are left, and the dogs end up attacking Amy and killing her, and the other girls have to figure out how they're going to escape and survive, not getting viciously attacked by these dogs. Brandon Lee. Sorry about that, guys. Um, yes, that's another one that I would like to cover too. Curly Jaws is Twilight Zone the movie. There's also Tales from the Dark Side as well, the movie that I could cover. See, giving me a lot more to go on for a second part. Dirk, you say Twilight Zone, Creepshow, and Trilogy of Terror. I can't decide the best out of those three. Um, I would probably say for me, Dirk, it would be Creepshow, Trilogy of Terror, and then Twilight Zone. Um, TJ Frizzy said the stories aren't too bad in After Midnight. It's an interesting concept. They're like urban legend type campfire stories. By the way, that skeleton was kind of goofy and an overdone twist ending. You know what the skeleton at the end reminded me of, TJ Frizzy, was the skeletons in Army of Darkness kind of. Um, oh, Curly Jaws, you say Brandon making a cameo. Well, Brandon's beginning to irritate me again. I love that dog. I love him so much. But he will not, he's got where he will not behave when I'm doing a live stream. And Brandon. Okay, guys, I promised I wasn't going to do this and make y'all watch the Evil Dead background, but he's just going to keep barking, and I'm afraid that he's going to wake Steve up. And Steve hasn't gotten very good sleep the last couple of days or so, and I want him to be able to get some sleep. So, just one moment. Okay, guys, I'm back once again. Hopefully, Brandon will lay down in his bed in the bedroom so he can relax. I don't know. For whatever reason, he didn't want to be stuck back here with me. Uh, let's see. Oh, Grim Prairie Tales, Dirk. Yes. Um, I watched that one, but I probably need to rewatch it before I talk about it again. Um, oh, Curly Jaws, you say Steve needs some gummies. They'll knock him out. Yeah, but unfortunately, I don't know if that would be a good idea through the week when he's working. Well, actually, Texas, he is on something called trazodone, which is not a tranquilizer, but it's supposed to relax him so that he can sleep. But I think I'm going to have to talk to the vet about seeing if we could safely increase the dose. But I'm going to have to ask the vet about that before we do it, because when he first started taking these trazodone, it worked like a charm. He went to sleep within about an hour of him taking it, and he slept through the night. But here in the last few months, he's just been up and down, up and down, up and down out of the bed. He won't, and doing that barking thing, which is why we had to take him to the vet in the first place, because neither Steve nor I were getting any sleep because Brandon was barking all night, or some absent. Um, I don't know. Yes, Steve on absence might be dangerous. Jay, you say you had to be up at 4 a.m. for work for a long time. I feel for Steve. His struggle is real. Well, see, I mean, I don't know if he told you guys, maybe it was 4 a.m., but I mean, it's still early, but it's 5 a.m. It's just an hour earlier than he had to before. And I think once, I mean, I feel like once he gets adjusted to it, that he's going to, feel a little better. But there's always that period of adjustment. And at least he's not doing shift work. You know what I mean, where you are doing a swing shift. Um, People like that have their sleep patterns really messed up. But if you stay on the same hours, I feel like you would eventually get adjusted. Goodness, guys, my voice is starting to go. Maybe that's a sign that I've talked too much. You think? Dirk, you say lucid dreams. Um, Dirk, you say you used to work 18 hours a day. That shit sucks. Well, yeah. Goodness gracious. Um, Texas, you say trazodone is fucked up. My doctor prescribed that for me, and I'd wake up not knowing where I was. Um, he doesn't do that, thankfully. Um, he's on 100 milligrams of it. I don't know how many milligrams they had you on, Texas, but for the most part, he does okay. Now it seems like he sleeps really soundly in the morning. There are sometimes when I have to literally, pat him to wake him up to come eat in the morning. So, especially when I have to go to work and I want to make sure that all the dogs have ate before I leave. But yeah, that's bad. Okay, old girly Jaws. I mean, I almost knew you were going to say that, but that's another one I'll have to politely disagree with you on it. Um, but in all honesty, Creepshow 3 had nothing to do with George Romero or Stephen King or Tom Savini or anybody, any of the principal players that created the first two. Darky said, "Oh shit, you done it now, oh Curly." Okay. Anyway, back to After Midnight, and you guys feel free to keep putting stuff in the chat. Um, the last story is the one that really gives me cold chills, and it gives me cold chills thinking about it. And I can see why the filmmakers decided to save this story for last, because this is the story that, if any of them is going to give you pause, if any of these are going to give you cold chills, it's going to be this one. And this has Marge Helgenberger playing a telephone um, operator. Remember back when they had telephone operators, people that would take messages for famous people or up and coming people. And Brandon's up again. I can hear him whining back there. Um, and they would take messages for them. And then when these people returned home from their acting jobs, the telephone operator would give them messages. This was in the days before cell phones and before everybody and their mother had answering machines, and and like I said, before cell phones, when everybody and their mother has a phone literally almost connected to them at all times. Um, TJ Frizzy, you say it didn't have anything to do with good filmmaking either. LOL. Uh, yeah, yeah. Just, I'm not. I'm not even going to go there, because if I get started on it, I and like I said, Curly Jaws is entitled, just like the rest of us, to like whatever movie they choose. I take a lot of flack for stuff like Terror on Tour, but it doesn't bother me. I'm still gonna like it. So, um, anyway, there's a psychopathic killer who wants to get to know this soap opera actress. And first he started hanging out on, around the studio where she was filming the soap opera, and he might have been writing her letters and stuff. And now he knows where she lives at. He knows where her apartment building is at, and he's dangerously obsessed with her. And Marge Helgenberger, like I said, plays this telephone operator, where when she gets to the office where this service is located, and her boss is there, and her boss is the only one there. And actually, her boss brings up the fact that if she was going to go under, if she didn't lay off most of her staff. So it was just going to be her doing the day shift, and Marge Helgenberger's character doing the night shift, because the boss literally says today it's answer machines and beepers and stuff like that. So at that point, places like All Night, which is what the place was called, the answering service was called in the movie, were beginning to be phased out at this point. So she's basically, the boss leaves her the number, and leaves her home number, and says, if you have any trouble, please don't call unless it's very important, but I'm going to go home and get some sleep, and I'll see you in the morning unless something happens. So the crazy guy starts calling. Maybe I shouldn't call him crazy, but the psychopath starts calling after. The boss takes one call in the presence of Marge Helgenberger, um, and explains about this guy that's called about 5 times already. So then Marge Helgenberger starts getting the calls from this guy, and um, he says, "Make sure you tell her that I called." And like she gets really kind of snotty there with him for a while, and then she proceeds to tell him, "I'm just trying to make sure I get your message, sir." But there's still that hint of sarcasm. It's like, leave me the hell alone, and I don't want to be bothered with you anymore. But it's one of those cases where she also doesn't realize how dangerous this guy is. Because he ends up killing the soap opera actress and then coming after Marge Helgenberger's character. Um, Even killing the security guard in the building where All Night is located, killing her boss when she calls her boss frantically and asks her to come to uh, the building. Um, so then the final scene, and all the while, Marge Helgenberger's character was in a. Uh, they went to ski on a holiday weekend, ended up slipping on some ice as soon as they got to the lodge. And so she's on crutches this whole segment, this whole story. So she thinks she's, escaped this guy, and she hears the phone ringing. She goes to where they've got the um, telephone operator board, where you unplug and plug in these little uh, plug things. I don't know all the terminology, um, to be able to take calls. And so she does that, and then slowly behind her, you see the killer. And he slowly, kind of like a Michael Myers thing, comes into view out of the darkness, and says something like, "Hello, Alex." And then it goes back to the wraparound story. So that one was really the one that gave me cold chills. And the one that really stuck with me out of all three of the stories. Now, the wraparound story is kind of a mixed bag, and we were talking about that a little bit earlier, that it was kind of goofy, kind of hokey. Um, TJ Frizzy, you say, I like zombie nightmares, so who knows anything? Sometimes they're just fun, though, aren't they, TJ Frizzy? They don't have to make logical sense all the time. They don't have to be movies that everybody likes. Um, they could be out on the fringes and all that. In fact, I like stuff that's out on the fringes, as I've said before. I like zombies better when they were out on the fringes. Durkee said, "Yeah, I take a lot of shit for loving and claiming 2001: A Space Odyssey is a true horror story." Well, Dirk, I could see um, where that could certainly be true of that movie. It's been a little while since I've seen it, but I probably need to go back and watch it again, actually. So, like I was saying, the wraparound story, in and of itself, is kind of a mixed bag. Some of it's hokey, some of it's, amateurish, some of it's creepy, um, but it works, in my opinion. Um, um, but what the wraparound story ends up being is the jock who was humiliated in class by the professor wants to get his revenge on the professor, even if it means killing this guy. So he basically strings the professor up upside down, pours a ring of gas around this guy, lights it on fire. Um, Several people end up getting burned up, several of the students. And soon it's only Gillian McWhirter's character uh, left alive, and the professor has turned into a skeleton that, like I said, looks like Army of Darkness, and he's just like, ah, you're next, and he's chasing her, and like, as you will notice, as she's running to get away from the professor, who is now a skeleton with an axe, she's running through the scenes of the different stories. Um, and then all of a sudden, we see the main character wake up. She's had a nightmare. So you're like, oh, wow, this whole movie was a nightmare. Even the wraparound story was a nightmare. The stories within this wraparound were a nightmare. So then you see Gillian McWhirter's character sitting in like the center of the college square, or whatever you would want to call it, just like she was in the beginning of the movie. Got the same clothes and stuff on. Pamela Siegel's character comes, and they kind of have a similar conversation as the how the film opened, and then they start to go to the class, the Psychology of Fear, and you hear the professor saying, "My name is Edward Derrick. Welcome to the Psychology of Fear," and then the film ends. This had two directors. Ken and Jim Wheat directed it, and wrote it and produced it. So they did all of the legwork, basically, except the acting. Um, and you get the special features. You get new audio commentary with the writers, producers, directors, Ken and Jim Wheat, which is good. I have listened to that. A new interview with actress Gillian McWhirter, which I really enjoyed. And you get a theatrical trailer. This is a Scream Factory release. Wes, you want to know how big is that poster behind me? Um, I don't know, actually. You talking realistically, how big is this? I don't know. I just found this image online, so I just, if you want to search for it, Wes, I just put horror anthologies in, and this was one of the images that came up. So, um, yeah, I've just got it. It's part of my green screen setup on here for tonight. Um, so, anyway, I highly recommend this one, of course. Like I said, it's probably one that not a lot of people have seen, because this is one that it took me, years before I discovered it. I definitely didn't discover it way back in 1989. So I'm guessing it was one that maybe slipped under the radar. And I used to have the DVD, but when Scream Factory put out this Blu-ray, I just had to get it. And Steve's like, yeah, we know you had to get it. Okay, so we've just got two more to cover. And the next to last one is Body Bags, and there's a lot of green on this, guys, so it's you can kind of see the poster, this poster art for Body Bags behind this, and it's the same image basically, although you really can't see John Carpenter's character of the coroner very good, because my big head's in front of it. But anyway, it made me curious, because this is a Scream Factory release too. Yeah, no, we didn't get a poster with that. But anyway, this movie has a lot of principal players, I guess I would say. Um, John Carpenter directed the gas station and hair segments, and Toby Hooper directed the last one. Um, Probably my favorite one of the three is the first one, the gas station. Uh, so this is basically a John Carpenter, Toby Hooper collaboration. Um, that song's in your head now, Dirk. Sorry about that, buddy. Um, so we also have Robert Carradine in this story. Stacy Keach is in the hair segment. Um, see, Mark Hamill stars in the third segment. Twiggy is in this. Deborah Harry's in this. Sheena Easton. David Naughton. John Agar from Tarantula. David Warner from Time After Time. Plus, there are also cameos by Wes Craven, Toby Hooper, and Roger Corman. Um, so you got a lot of fun things and fun people in this little trilogy of stories. Yes, there is a nice, very nice Sam Raimi cameo as well. Uh, that one was probably my favorite one. And Carpenter did do great in the corner role. Um, Derek, you said you'd love to see Bob Clark beat Carpenter's ass in a Santa suit. That'd be great. Well, that might be interesting, but unfortunately, with the untimely death of Bob Clark, we won't ever get to see that, will we? But so let's talk about these stories. So the gas station story. Alex Datcher, who was on Passenger 57, stars as a woman working the late shift at a gas station. And after watching this, I would never want to work in one of those little glassed in buildings at a gas station ever, ever in my entire life. Uh, while a killer is on the loose. Um, and that killer turns out to be Robert Carradine, which is very interesting. He really, made that role his own, and he took a wicked turn in this movie, and I thought he did an excellent job. This one was very creepy. Um, Hit all the right bases, like I've said before about a lot of other movies and stories. Um, and in my opinion, this was the strongest story of them all, especially the scenes where Robert Carradine is chasing Alex Datcher's character from one place to another in this pretty much a small area in a gas station. Dirk, you say right. I'd still love to see it. Well, you never know, do you? Maybe one of Bob Clark's relatives or something would take on the role. TJ Frizzy, you said a job like that won't work with my claustrophobia, lol. Well, when you see stuff like this, and it really gives you pause because this is realistic. There's nothing supernatural at play in this story. You've got a psychopathic killer who wants somebody dead within this storyline, and he's pretty much hell bent on killing this girl. Um, yeah, I mean, it would be a little bit different if there was some kind of supernatural element to it, But in this case, you don't really have that, and I think that makes it all the more scary. Um, the other two seem to have a supernatural element to them, or maybe the hair story has a science fiction horror slash horror element. So the next one is called Hair. Stars Stacy Keach as a man that fears he's going bald. Um, his girlfriend, played by Sheena Easton, tells him at first, don't worry about it. I don't care if you are going bald. Um, I'm in love with you, whatever, whatever. But he just becomes obsessed with the possibility of losing his hair. So he ends up going to one of those, it sort of reminds me of the hair club for men type things. Remember those advertisements? Um, so Stacey Keach miraculously gets these long, beautiful, healthy looking locks. But it turns out what these are alien beings that look like little worms, and they end up feeding on his brain. And he starts out getting sick, like he's got a cold or a flu, and then it continues to get worse. He has holes in his little pinholes in his body where these little creatures have went in and out of his skin. He goes to the doctor that did his hair transplant, and he's like, "What have you done to me?" It turns out the doctor and his nurse, played by Deborah Harry, are both aliens who have come to, along with these other, worm like creatures, which David Warner's character and Deborah Harry's character are both, they both have these worm like creatures in them. I mean, that's what they really are. But they've kind of taken on a skin of a human looking skin. But they've discovered that human beings have a food source that is very beneficial to them, and that is the brain. And he says, "We're especially enjoying your brain right now. We enjoy fat." And so the final shot is Stacy Keach's character just sitting there. I mean, his brain, I guess, is totally gone at that point. And the doctor has told the nurse to uh, put Richard, which is Stacy Keach's character, into transplant containers. And that's the last scene you hear Deborah Harry humming and taking these worm like creatures and putting them in containers. Okay, so yeah, I agree with you, Dirk, that the gas station one is the best of the three. I think it's the most effective one. The a third one is called I, and it stars Mark Hamill and Twiggy. And Mark Hamill is a baseball player who's getting ready to go pro. And he's in a car accident where he loses his eye, and that's the eye that he uses to see the ball. Uh, I guess that's the eye that sees the ball real good when it's being pitched. I don't understand all that much about baseball, but I just kind of went with it. Um, so Roger Corman shows up in this one. He plays one of the doctors. He and another doctor um, get Mark Hamill to consent to an eye transplant surgery, which seems to go well. But it turns out the donor eye was taken from a killer who killed a bunch of women. And unfortunately, Mark Hamill changes from a loving husband and a future father because his wife, played by Twiggy, lets him know that she's pregnant. Uh, he turns from this loving husband and potential loving father into a madman, um, where he's essentially attacking his wife at the end, meaning to bury her in the backyard. Um, but Twiggy's character ends up showing him the Bible, and she tells him that Brett's in the Bible, and that's Mark Hamill's character's name to me. Brett's in the Bible. Brett's in the Bible, and there's an inscription on this Bible of where his wife had given him the Bible, and it talks about their love and everything, and that overpowers the evil that's inside Mark Hamill's character of Brett, and he ends up stabbing himself with these giant scissors, uh, or shears, whatever you want to call them, in the eye, and goes into his brain and ends up killing him. So, like I said, all the stories are interesting in their own way, but I would have to say the gas station, the first story, is my all-time favorite in that. So this, again, is another Scream Factory release. So you get audio commentary director John Carpenter and actor Robert Carradine on the gas station, which is very good. Audio commentary director John Carpenter and actor Stacy Keach on Hair. That one's also good. Audio commentary was producer Sandy King and Justin Beam on I. I'm not sure why they couldn't get Toby Hooper, because Toby Hooper was still living when this was put out. So I'm not sure why they couldn't get him to do audio commentary for the I. Unzipping Body Bags featurette with John Carpenter, producer Sandy King, and actors Stacy Keach and Robert Carradine, and a trailer. And there is Body Bags. I highly recommend this one. If not for anything else, for that first story, the gas station. Okay. So, the last one we're going to talk about tonight, and like I told you, I plan to do a part 2 of this at some point. Dirk, you want to know, did I like Scare Package? I want to say I did, but I need to go back and watch it again, Dirk, because my brain's a little fuzzy on it. But I want to say, when you first mentioned it, that I do recall liking it. Okay. So, this is Campfire Tales. And you probably are thinking, oh man, that's not a brand new movie, but that's a newer movie. And Dana likes it. Yes, Dana does like this one. And one of these stories is actually it's the first story they tell, is the strongest one and the most creepy one, in my opinion, in this trilogy of stories. Yeah, I totally agree, Dirk, that it was all around, it was a good movie, but the first story was the best one. Now, there are 2 different movies that are called Campfire Tales. This is not the one that has Gunnar Hansen in it. I mean, as far as quality, this one here is better than the one with Gunnar Hansen, but the one with Gunnar Hansen is entertaining. Definitely worth a watch as well. But this one is described as a terrifying cross between Scream and Tales from the Crypt. Has Christine Taylor and Ron Livingston in it. So, 4 teenagers are returning home from a concert, and the driver of the car is driving really recklessly. They end up crashing their car on a deserted road. To ward off the cold, they end up building a fire and wait for help. So they end up telling stories, you know, to keep each other occupied while while they're waiting for help. So each tale is more lurid, more horrifying, more shocking than anything they've heard before. Yet, for these unlucky teens in the woods, the biggest shock is still to come. And I'm not going to give that twist away. But the first story is the one I really want to talk about, because this is the one that really resonated with me. And for some odd reason, guys, I am totally forgetting the middle story. I know there's 3 stories to this thing. I'm going to look this up real quickly just to jar my memory of what that second story was. I think it was the second story that... You know, I just thought of one that I didn't cover this time, and that's the Willies, which is another good anthology film. Oh, yeah. How could I forget that? And I think that was actually the first story. Okay, so it's the middle story. The middle story is the one that I like the best. The first story is about a couple who are going on their honeymoon, and they're in an RV, and it's kind of reminiscent of the Hook story, crossed with the little variation on that story where the boyfriend ends up hung upside down from a tree, and his class ring or whatever is scraping on the top of the car. So what happens is the couple gets warned not to go into the woods and stay. You know, there's always somebody telling these young people, don't do this, you're doomed, or whatever. But do they ever listen? No, they don't. Of course, there wouldn't be a movie if they had listened. And so they end up either running out of gas in this RV, or for whatever reason, they end up deep in the woods. They have sex. There's a pretty hot sex scene between the 2 main characters. But I heard something. I didn't know what it was. Not sure what that was. But it seems like there's a creature of some sort out in the woods. And, of course, the husband tells his wife, he says, I'm going to go and try to get help, and you stay here, lock the door behind me, and don't open the door for anybody unless you know it's me. And they do kind of like a secret knock type thing. So after he supposedly leaves, she ends up getting attacked by whatever this creature is. It's trying to get into the RV where she's at. And then things quiet down, but she hears something going, ee, ee, and it's, you know, it sounds like something trying to get in. So she kind of holds up for the night, and then the cops show up the next day. And the cop tells her just to, you know, slowly come out of the RV, but don't look behind her. Just keep moving towards him. And she sees, I think in the side mirrors on the RV, I believe, she is able to see her husband hanging upside down, and I believe his ring, his wedding band, was making the screeching noise on the top of the RV. Um, so that's a pretty good little story. But the middle story is the one that really chilled me to the bone. And I think the main reason was because the killer in this one was so bizarre and creepy looking. And I've seen what the guy really looks like when he wasn't in this movie. I think he looks like a normal guy, but boy, he looked twisted in this movie. And this is another urban legend type tale. You've all heard the one, right, about the roommate that gets killed, um, and the other girl in the room uh, turns on the light the next morning, or in the daylight sees that, one, her roommate is dead, two, that in blood on the wall it says, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" Because the night before she had not turned on the light. She just thought, this was also in the movie Urban Legend. It also has, the bulk of it is, you probably have heard the story too about the young girl who has a dog, and she's, hears these noises in the house and it scares her, but as long as her dog is there, she knows everything's okay. And so she puts her hand over the side of the bed, and what she thinks is the dog licks her hand, and she relaxes. And she hears the noises a little bit later, and she puts her hand out, and what she thinks is her dog licks her hand, and she's reassured. Um, you remember that, Dirk? So what happens is this young girl, probably, all of 12 maybe. Um, First of all, her birthday's coming up, and she already discovered that she's getting a bike for her birthday. Her parents are going out. They're pretty much thinking her older sister is going to stay at home with her. After the parents leave, the older daughter basically splits the money that was given to her for her and her sister to get, some takeout or whatever, and while the parents are gone, get pizza or whatever. So she basically splits the money with her younger sister, and then she leaves and goes on a date or whatever. So the girl has been talking online. This is supposed to be in the early days of the internet. She's in a chat room. She thinks she's talking to another girl her age. It turns out she's talking to a maniacal killer, who is trying to find out where young girls live so he can go to their houses and kill them. So, unfortunately, she ends up giving this guy too much information. He's able to find her. She's evidently been talking to this guy under the guise of a girl her age for a while. He's been spying on her, watching her as she plays with her dog in the yard, as her family's having cookouts, different things. And I think he's videotaping her as well. So he might be not only a killer of children, but a pedophile as well. That's kind of hinted at. So she basically tells this person who she thinks is another young girl that her mother's and father are gone out for the night. Her sister's left. She's all home alone, and the girl's saying, like, "Aren't you scared?" And she's like, "No, I got my dog with me," and all that. So It gets later, and the girl gets sleepy, and she crawls in the bed, and the dog is laying under the bed. She starts hearing the noises, gets scared, um, and then she starts hearing a dripping later, and she's just too scared to leave the bed. But every time she puts her hand underneath the bed, what she thinks is her dog licks her hand. But she finally gets up the courage to go in the bathroom and finds her dog dead with its throat cut. That's what the dripping is. And on the mirror, it says maniacs lick hands too. And then at that point, the girl screams and runs. The maniac comes out from under the bed. He's the one that's been licking her hand all this time. Very, very disturbing story, very effective story. Um, and another reason I think this one is so effective is because, like the gas station story and body bags, it could happen. There's no supernatural element. We've heard of similar things happening where not only pedophiles, but murderers and rapists and all kinds of things have been able to find victims through the internet by unsuspecting people, unfortunately. Um, so that one was a story that really gave me cold chills and really resonated with me. The last story is kind of an urban legend type story, too. It has Glenn Quinn on it, who many of you will remember played Mark on Roseanne, Becky's boyfriend, who also became her husband later on in the show. Um, Dirk, you say that's creepy as hell. I'm going to have to watch that now. Yeah, you might want to watch it with I'm not saying you guys are wusses or anything, but I've watched a lot of stuff, and that gave me the creeps. So you might want to watch that with the lights on. Um, yeah, TJ Frizzy, always look under the bed. But I guarantee you watch this, you won't ever be letting your hand hang over the side of the bed anymore. you know. But, of course, none of my dogs have ever gotten under our bed and laid down. That's just never happened, ever. Uh, so I did put my hand to the side of the bed and something licked it, I'd be getting the hell out of there fast. Of course, I don't think our dogs would let anybody get in there, get in our house, unless the killer was able to dispatch them quickly. But anyway, so Glenn Quinn's character is, I believe, riding on a motorcycle, and I think he needs to stop and fix his motorcycle or whatever. He sees he stops at this house where there's a beautiful girl there. Very beautiful girl. Um, but there is a supernatural element to this one. And you guys remember the story about the guy that finds this girl who has a lot in common with. He basically falls head over heels in love with her. They make love, and it's everything he thought it would be. But the girl has a scarf around her neck, or in this case, I think it's like a choker on, and she refuses to take it off. And the old story is eventually the guy waits for her to be asleep, and he takes the scarf off, and her head falls off because she's been beheaded. So essentially, I guess she's like a ghost or whatever. Um, it's also similar to the story of the hitchhiker, where the guy picks up this girl on the side of the road. Um, she asks if he can drop her off at her house or near her house. He ends up dropping her off at a cemetery. Um, while she's in the car with him, she's cold, and so he gives her his jacket or something to put on. Um, the next day, he goes to this girl's house to to find her, and maybe ask her on a date or whatever. Her mother is there, and she says, "Well, my daughter died 6 months ago, a year ago, in a car accident or whatever." And he ends up going back to the cemetery, and his jacket is laying over her gravestone. So, this story is similar to those two stories, but I still say the middle story is my favorite and the most effective one. Um, there are pretty much no special features to speak of on this. There may be a Blu ray out of this. I am not sure. I would have to look into that. Um, but nice little package of stories. Like I said, I'm not going to give away the twist ending at the end with the wraparound story. I'll just let you guys figure that one out for yourself. If you've never seen this, you want to hunt it up and watch it. Again, it may be one that's on YouTube. Um, Durkee say, I'll make my wife watch it with all the lights off. Dirk, you're going to torture your wife. Um, Dirk said, don't know why that doubled my comment YouTube glitches. Yeah, I noticed that it was double, but who knows? YouTube's YouTube, isn't it? Uh, Dirk, you said, I thought you was about to say cover the Adam's apple. That would be some scary shit. Yeah, it really would, wouldn't it? Um, but, guys, we have reached the end of this live stream. I hope you have enjoyed, listening to me ramble on uh, for about 3 hours on horror anthology films. I've It's jogged my memory, just us talking back and forth, and you guys putting things in the chat and stuff like that, of other ones that I could cover for a second one of these. And TJ Frizzy, you said there's a crappy free copy on YouTube. There you go. Um, but I thank you guys for joining me for this horror anthology live stream. We had 0 drop frames. Yay, AT&T fiber. That's all I can say. And my connection has stayed green the whole time because I've been glancing down at it as I've been doing this. Um, well, thank you, Dirk. You guys make me want to keep doing these because you do keep enjoying me doing them, and that's all the it doesn't take much to get me to want to do these. If nobody ever showed up or anything, then I would probably slowly start to not do them. But inevitably somebody ends up coming into these. Even Wes and Aaron, CK and Uncle Bill, show up from time to time, although Aaron didn't show up during this one. um, Oh, you got your shirts in today, Texas? Awesome. Um, we appreciate it. And you said you got one of mine, and you got one of Steve as the captain. I'm just curious, which T-shirt of mine did you get? Did you get the one like this one with my big old face on it, or did you get the less frightening one that just has my face in the moon? Um, but we do both thank you for getting those. Um, well, thank you, TJ Frizzy. I'm glad they were fun selections for you. I hope the next time I do one on horror anthology films, it's as as fun as this one was. It was fun for me too. Um, you got the other one, like the one with my face small in the moon, and it's got the cross from like Evil Dead 2 or whatever on it, and I think the first mate hat is hanging on it. Oh, you big UV face. Oh, your occult one as well. And that UB big face shirt is hilarious. Um, but I'm gonna give you a few more seconds. Like if somebody wants to, make a comment, suggest something for a future live stream, feel free to do that. Okay, the Deadite one. Okay, awesome. Um, but again, I wanted to thank everybody for showing up and for hanging out with me for a little over 3 hours. And Steve, of course, too. Yes. I'll be sure to tell him. Be sure to let him know. Um, has anybody got purchased one of the Steve Yummy Gummy shirts yet? Wes actually sent one to Steve, but Steve hasn't worn it yet. I'm going to tell him if he doesn't hurry up and wear it, I'm going to wear it first because I think it's funny. But anyway, I think I'm going to skedaddle on out of here for the night. Um, like I said in some previous live streams, I do have an interview tomorrow from 1 to 2. Might be a little bit less than an hour. You never know with stuff like this. So I'm going to try to get me some rest. So I'll be spry for that interview tomorrow. Think I'm going to maybe treat myself out to something to eat since I'm going to be downtown Louisville tomorrow. And yeah, I hope to be back with something new and exciting for you guys here soon. You said that's probably on your next door with the brutal shirt. There you go. Thank you, Texas. I think I'm going to need all the luck I can get. Thank you, Dirk. I appreciate that. But I'll see you guys on the flip side. You have a good night.